Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Ollie's Advertising Roundtable. Well, I'm just saying it's good evening, but you can be in the morning or in the afternoon. So whatever it is a good time of the day. Well, today and from today, we are starting a series of recordings dealing with brand as a part of our workshop series. Now, this workshop series will be in two parts. One will be knowledge about brand strategy, what is the brand communication, brand creative, and so on and so forth, for better understanding of the brand and other such allied matters. The next slot, which we'll be conducting very soon, will be a series of workshops for the practical application of the subjects that we are discussing, in this case, the brand. Now, I have with me Sudip Mallik. Sudip is a very old friend and a colleague. He is a IIM grad from IIM Kolkata, worked in ABP, which means Anandabajar, for quite some time. And then he worked for Clarion Advertising, which has now become, I think, some new name called 8.5 or 9.5, I'm not sure. And then he was with Tarasina McCann, TSA McCann, working as a creative writer. And then Sudip went on his own. He even now offers consultancy on brand strategy. And more importantly, he has been writing. He's been writing for the last 30 years. And I think it was sometime in the mid-90s that he used to run a column, a Sunday column in The Statesman. And he has also been an advertising writer. So here we have Sudip, who has got a marketing background, who is known to be a strategist, and who is also a writer. So he gives you almost a 360, at least 270-degree perspective of the brand and brand communication. So today we are going to talk about, and Sudip, can we have that slide up, please, on the screen share? The brand reconstruction, because I think we need to show it to our audience. And while Sudip does that, there will be a series of these being put up on the YouTube. So please, if you like this, visit YouTube, take a look at it, and well, give us your comments, give us your feedback. We will be, and so that we get updated. And then in the meantime, we will announce to you our date for the workshop. So today, the subject that we are discussing is brand building deconstructed. Now, when we say brand building deconstructed, and I noticed there is a word in the body copy. We are old timers, we still call it body copy. That is jargon. And in this jargon business, so I really want to ask Sudip, there are 4 keywords that I am able to, well, sift out of this particular poster. One is brand, the other is building, the third, very funnily, is deconstructed. I thought we were all into the process of brand building, and now we have an issue of deconstructing while building a brand. And the fourth is jargon. Now, Sudip, I would like you to start with the word jargon, simply because there seems to be a complete confusion as to what is a brand. Everybody seems to be having a definition of this is a brand, this is a brand, this is a brand. Some of them actually go back to quoting John Philip Jones. Many of them have not even heard of a man called Subrata Sengupta, the first Indian pioneer to have written something on brand positioning. And nowadays, what we thought in our time that a brand was a very valued business, today putting up a flex in some kind of a seminar, putting up your hoarding, a small little ad here, badge there, everything is a brand. So I'm very confused I am really confused after so many years in the business that, oh, brand kya tha aur abhi brand kya hai? Now, tomorrow we might be having rasgullas or mithais. Well, there are sandeshes, which has the name of the sweet shop embossed. So that is also, I presume, a brand. So what exactly is the brand? And then we can talk about the brand itself. First of all, the jargon, then the brand, then the building, then the deconstruction, in any order you feel like. So Sudip, it's all yours. Tell us, take it away.
Okay, it's. I think you actually missed the keyword in the ad itself, which is probably bullshit. Okay, so
Okay.
So, okay, before we talk about jargon, let us not pan jargon entirely, because jargon is also good in its own way. It actually means technical terms which two experts use to make themselves understood to each other. So when I say USB port to somebody, he understands what I mean by USB port. Otherwise, I'll have to go into a lot of complications to explain what it is. Similarly, with a lot of the stuff which we have learned in computers today, a hard drive, this is jargon. So jargon is not the issue. The issue actually is the bullshit which is there in jargon. Now, let me try and explain to you what I mean by bullshit in jargon. When we were young, we knew that there were rich countries and there were poor countries and there were countries in between. So it was quite very simple at our young age. Then at some point of time, this would be maybe when we were in middle school, that we discovered that it is not poor countries, they are backward countries. Okay, apparently being poor was too simple. Being backward was more holistic, as we now say. So the backward countries and the advanced countries. As we went through the years, this became underdeveloped countries. So backward, suddenly without having done anything, they became from backward, they went into underdeveloped, and then they became developing countries. I'm not sure what happened after that. I think it was less developed countries. And then they became emerging countries. Mind you, it is not that the poor people actually became necessarily noticeably better, but the whole jargon changed from poor and backward and underdeveloped to emerging, and maybe tomorrow it will become, differently developed or specially developed countries. And you will have no idea whether they are actually rich or poor. So jargon in itself is not bad, but what creates a problem is basically that we often use jargon to hide our own ignorance or to impress people, to make it seem that there's a lot more to it than there is. I mean, in marketing, we are doing it all the time. I mean, let us take an example. I mean, again, when we talk about brands, why do we buy a brand? We typically buy it because we like it or because we think it will deliver something. So we talked about customer liking in the early days. Then we talked about customer satisfaction. Then sometime maybe 15, 20 years ago, it became customer delight. Maybe it'll become customer ecstasy tomorrow, but ultimately people will continue to buy a brand because they like the brand. Similarly, we had customer loyalty, then it became customer connect, then it became customer relationships, and now I hear the latest jargon is customer affinity. Now, affinity is a emotional connect with something. Do I really have an emotional connect with my boot polish? I probably don't. Okay, I have an emotional connect with my dog. I have an emotional connect with, say, with Chudi Chandan. If I get to know somebody, initially I'm indifferent, then I start liking him, then maybe I become fond of him and have emotional connect. But this usually happens with living creatures. I may perform very intimate things with my toothbrush early in the morning, like putting it in my mouth, but I don't have an emotional connect. So I don't have affinity. So when I talk about customer affinity, I'm actually misleading the person at the other end, trying to make it sound grand. I like the toothbrush, it cleans my teeth, but when the bristles get distorted, I throw it away without a pang. I don't do that with a dog. When the dog dies, I get upset. Okay, similarly, we have, another example in marketing would be, say, we used to talk about testimonials earlier. Then the testimonial became spokesperson. Then it became a brand ambassador. Then last I heard it was a brand evangelist. Again, I mean, you can evangelize about your religion. You can't really evangelize about brands. I mean, if I go to a party and start telling you what a great brand Cherry Blossom is, I think you are going to, start looking left and right and try to wriggle away as fast as possible. So definitely, whatever we have to learn about brand building, we must understand that brands are not people, and brands are not great ideas which you are going to evangelize about. Okay, so let us keep it to a certain level of simplicity. I mean, I had a cartoon out here. Let me just share it with you. Which is, just one moment. Yeah, can you see it?
Yeah. You can see the jargon.
So, this is typically the problem with jargon. We need some new jargon because the public are starting to understand what we are talking about. Jargon has become something which we try to hide. So, in the series which we are going to talk about, both the academic classes like this one, as well as the workshops which you are going to follow it up with, we are going to do without jargon as far as possible. Sometimes a term may be required to understand, some nuance, but certainly, backward will remain backward. It is not going to become differently developed. Okay, customers are not going to have affinity. Customers are going to like your brand. Maybe they are going to buy it time and time again, in which case you can say that they become loyal customers, but they are not going to have customer affinity by any means. They are not going to become your evangelists. Now, let us take a look at the next part of this thing, which was deconstruction. Now, when we did, when I asked the art director to do this ad, this one, he actually misunderstood slightly, or maybe I did not explain it to him properly, because what he did was this. Let us see if I can get this up. What do you see now? You see the old visual, right?
Yeah, I see the old visual.
Yeah. Now, so I have to share the screen again.
Yeah.
So what we had was this one, which obviously is a much more dramatic visual than what we have got in the original. And if you go purely by like dislike, I would say this is a far better ad. However, this is not deconstruction. Because deconstruction essentially means that you take it apart in order to be able to put it together again. Now, if I break up a brick, I can't put it together again. So it is not destruction. When we talk about deconstruction, we basically mean something like something like this. This is a Lego set. You can take it apart, you can put it back, you can put it back in a different fashion, you can put it in a different shape. But it is deconstruction essentially means that it is capable of construction again. So again, what we are going to do is we are going to basically break down brand and building and words like strategy, etc., and try and understand what the words individually mean and what they collectively mean. So before we come to brand building per se, let us talk about a product, because recently I had an experience with a client who said that how can I turn my commodity into a product and then onto a brand? So obviously there's some misunderstanding at his end about what means what. Let us understand that product is like a person. All of us are persons. So everything which you buy and sell is a product. You can call it a service, but service is also a product. Products come in two categories. One is a commodity, the other is a brand. It's as simple as that. If it is not a brand, it is a commodity. Okay, so let us say if this is my product. Okay, now there's a cow out there in the herd of cows, which you can see. Now this is a commodity because you can't distinguish one cow from the other. It's a herd of cows. Right, now I have taken a cow with a particular reason, not only because we live in a holy cow country or because cows are important, but because the term brand itself is closely associated with cows. Okay, because what is a brand actually? A brand is basically hot iron. Now, why did you need a brand with a cow? It's again quite simple. in the old days, you basically didn't have, the whole variety of products which we used to have earlier. So people used to have one house. They had food grains which were consumable, and they had cows for storing wealth. Okay, so if you were storing your wealth in a product which was going to walk around and possibly get stolen and eaten by somebody, you needed some way of identifying that this belongs to me. So what you did was you took this hot iron and you stuck it on the back of a cow. Okay, and this hot iron was called a brand. Even prior to branding cows, actually, there used to be a very nasty habit of branding people on their foreheads with hot iron again, with an X, to say this person is dubious. So if you were a thief, you were branded. The thing that of course is in the old days, but ultimately the purpose of branding is twofold. One is to tell you that this belongs to me. The other is to tell you this stands for something. So in the old days, this stood for a thief. Even when I'm selling cows, basically what happens, say, if you have read the Westerns in the old days, Louis L'Amour, Sackett Brand, Max Brand, Oliver Strange. We grew up with a lot of these books. You would understand that brands also had a reputation because people knew that, say, the brand XXX was fed on good grass and therefore it had nice fat cows. Or that Farmer Jones or Rancher Jones, which owned the saddle tea, his cows get good milk. Or somebody else had a good set of breeding bulls. So they actually carried some information about what the brand stood for. So we basically have a brand as an identification mark, and we have the brand as something which tells you what does this product stand for, what does it promise, what does it deliver. Okay, so that is what there is fundamentally to be understood about the term brand. Now, let us also understand that it does not need to come in a package with a nice, cap and stuff like that to be a brand. You don't have to be a Coke. Almost anything can be branded in the sense of being recognized. So, for example, you got a puchka wala in the street corner. Now, everybody knows him because he makes very good puchkas. So you say that, okay, you know that old guy with the beard in the corner who sells very good puchkas. And I say, yes, I know. So that means that he's also a brand. He may not have a particular name, but he strikes a mental image in both of us. So then comes to the third part of it, which is that brands, therefore, are not really created or built by the manufacturer. The brand is actually built in the mind of the consumer. Because if we take many brands, you will find that some people hate it, some people love it. The manufacturer is doing the same thing. So let us take today, we are all into politics. So brand Modi, some people love him, some people hate him. Brand Trump, Donald Trump of USA, there's some people who love him, some people who hate him. They are doing the same things. They are taking out the same outputs. It is just that I, as the receiver, I am picking up different cues and fitting them into my brand image. And again, a brand image is nothing very interesting. It is like, you know a set of people and they all have an image in your mind. So I think that, okay, this guy is irritating. This guy is good fun. This guy is boring. This guy is good to talk to. This guy is very humorous. Each of these words are generating a certain image in my mind, very similar to what a brand does. Because at the end of the day, whether it is a product or a person or a dog, our reactions are more or less set from our own upbringing and genetic coding. Okay, so if I see a baby, all of us feel kindly towards it. If I see a snake, all of us run away from it, because we ultimately share the same kind of background within us. Okay, if you will notice that, because we come from the monkeys, one of the first things which a child does is to make a gesture like this. What is it? It is grasping. Because for a monkey, if it cannot cling on to something, it is going to fall and die. So genetic coding is what is the common factor for all of us. And whether it is a person or a product, we will react always from the sense of a genetic coding of responses to various things. If I see a dog and I like dogs, I will react positively to that. Vodafone. If I see a baby, I will react positively to that ad, or a child. So Amul. Advertisers are just clever enough to bring in the cues which people normally relate to and incorporate within the brand image. Okay. Now let us take the second part of it, which is building. Now this is a building. Okay, now we all understand what a building is in common terms. We may not understand it as brand building. Yeah, please.
Sudip, can I just interrupt you for a minute for no other reason? I think I guess to give you a little bit of a break, a breather. But while you talked about, that a certain puchka wala at a certain point is excellent the other day, I just want to share this experience and how right you are. I'd gone for a party which was taking place on a ship on the Hooghly, and these people had laid out all kinds of street food, So there was Badshah's rolls and there was something. And then I found there was something, they were sitting hot. The hot place was, the puchkas. People were all coming and there was this lady. And I found the board over there was said that Southern Avenue Puchka. So I actually went and checked with this lady who was managing the event, which was our very own Savani Chakraborty's event management company, Support Act. And I said, what is this Southern Avenue Puchka? She said, well, don't you know, just at the crossing of the Ladies Park, the Vivekananda Park, they sit there. And that is known by over a period of time, it has come to be known as the Southern Avenue Puchka. That goes to prove that the branding that you talked about has happened in the mind by the location. Similarly, my years in Delhi, and before I had migrated, I've been visiting Delhi regularly, and you have been also there in your college days. You remember what is called the Moolchand Paratha, which were available for late hours till wee hours of the morning, and after a good drinking session, that was the only place where you could go and eat. Well, Moolchand Paratha just happened because it was next to it was at the Moolchand crossing. So it took on the name, it was an unknown Paratha wala. But now see what has happened. I'll give you another example. North Calcutta, Shambajar 5 Pond Crossing had this place called Golbari, which made a very unique, they were known for their own variety of kosha mangsho. Today, I find in Delhi, it's not a chain, but a lot of people have used that name. Yahan pe Moolchand Paratha milta hai. Moolchand Paratha wala is gone because they have constructed the metro, Lajpat Nagar metro station. So that Moolchand is not there. But Moolchand Parathas are now all over. And also I find that in Kolkata, that you have many places selling Golbari kosha mangsho. Now just see, as you said, that this is the brand. This is actually the brand.
So, I mean, in our college days, the favorite place to go out and eat was Tip Dabs.
Right. Tip Dabs, yeah.
Okay, I don't know whether you heard of it. It is actually Tibetan Dhaba.
Yeah.
But, everybody knew what Tip Dabs was and everybody has been there to eat.
Right.
One case of actually something of the sort actually becoming a brand is, I don't know whether you've ever been to Jamshedpur.
But I've been there.
Jamshedpur, when I hear from my parents who were there from there, but there was this guy who was chanashur on the roadside. He was called Fakir.
Okay.
I mean, and he used to put some, patented masala in it, which everybody loved. Today, Fakir Chanachur actually is a brand and a shop, and people who come to Jamshedpur would, invariably carry away with them one packet or several packets of Fakir Chanachur.
Right.
So the main point is that we make a lot of song and dance about branding, but we don't build brands. We only provide cues.
And
the brand is
recognition.
built in the consumer's mind. I mean, that is the first point which I think everybody, including some veterans, tend to forget or need to remember. That this whole term brand building is wrong for the simple reason that we don't build the brand. I mean, the brand is built undoubtedly, but it is actually the consumer who builds the brand. We provide the bricks and the mortar. Okay, so this distinction is sometimes important because, no matter what you do, different consumers will form different images of the product or the person. So which is why, in a class full of people, you have one best friend who nobody else likes, maybe. But there are very few people who are popular across the class. Now, the whole idea of these brand building workshops is how do you become the guy who is popular across the class rather than among a few people. Otherwise, no matter what your personality is, you'll always have one group of friends who like you. I mean, another group may think you're a boring, dull, dud fellow, but you always have a group which also likes you. Well, he's a nice guy, or they forgive you for being dull or boring or whatever. But so the attempt here is to maximize your popularity, but at the same time, we must understand that because brands are built on individual minds, there's always scope for brands which are called niche brands. They appeal to certain minds. So the science of providing the right cues for the right audience is what this whole the long-term exercise of what we call brand building is all about. How do we? Well, you are in a new class. Nobody knows anybody, but after a while, you will sort of form little groups and clumps, and some guys will become popular across the class. One guy will be disliked by everybody. So let us try and figure out, is there a science to it? Is there a way to it? What is it which makes some people or some products popular and some products not so popular? And assuming that I am not a widespread product, how do I become popular in my target group and in my niche? That is what we are trying to do in the series of workshops which you are talking about, because there are many elements to it. One is, but we have just explained the concepts. Then there's the question of strategy and planning. Then there's the question of, executing it in terms of copywriting and art direction. Then there's the question of media and digital media and, what happens when I get this feedback. So there's a whole chain of stuff which you need to understand. Right now, we are just taking care of the concepts of brand building, and then we will take on the concepts of copywriting. Then we'll take on concepts of art direction. Then we'll do some live projects. For example, let us say for students, the most important piece of communication which they make is their CV. So for students, the most important piece of communication which they have is the CV. Now, very often I find that, CVs start with name, address, telephone numbers, father's name, high school, very, very typical structured kind of product. But if it was being treated like, if a person was being treated like a brand, would you really go about it that way? Which really reads like a telephone directory? Or would you try and project your personality and your skills upfront, which is what you would do if you were taking the advertising approach? I'm not saying that you have to do it. Perhaps you will get a job very well by, putting father's name on top. But at the same time, if you say something like, say, I solve your problems in this field, out of all the hundreds of CVs which are coming to a person with the father's name on top, you will certainly stand out. He will take an interest in you. So I'm not saying that you have to be terribly creative or you have to be a copywriter or an art director to make a creative CV. I'm not even saying it has to be a creative CV, but you can definitely put in advertising principles to ensure that your brand is being built. Similarly, you are opening a restaurant somewhere or you're starting some e-business somewhere. how do you go about it? Do you entirely go by, likes and dislikes? I like this color, therefore let me use this color. Or is there a coherence and a strategy to the brand building? So let us take a look at what we were talking about, which is building. Brand, we have understood that anything is a brand. The cow is a primary brand. And the consumer can decide whether he wants a cow for milk or for meat or for, for cow dung or for gomutra, as they say nowadays. It has many products which it offers. So depending on what kind of cow, or you want the cow as a pet, you might say sweet-natured cow which you can bring home and love. That is cow as a pet. But it is not going to appeal to somebody who is looking for milk. He needs a completely different appeal. So when we are talking about brands and brand building and product, we have to get a fix of who am I selling to and what am I selling. So let us go back to the building. Just one moment. Let me see if I can share the screen again. Yeah. So this is a building. Now, obviously, if I go to who builds a building? Many people do, but primarily when you want to build something, you will go to an architect and say, I want to build. Now, if you go to an architect and say, I want to build, first things he will ask is, what do you want to build? Okay, so just as an architect starts with certain primary questions, if you are going to talk about brand building, you must start with the same kind of primary questions because you are constructing something. We have finished the deconstruction of the words. Now we are back to constructing the building part of it. So let us take it as though, you are an architect. Somebody has come to you and says, I want to build a brand. Now, obviously, if he says only this much and stops, you're going to be clueless. So you have to ask him certain questions. Let us take a look at, what are the normal things which an architect will ask you, and let us see if we can relate it to what we do, because what we are doing is the same thing. We are trying to build an edifice in somebody's mind, a structure in somebody's mind. Okay, it can be captured in the image like we just saw, but ultimately it might also take on more dimensions and become a complete building, with rooms and facilities and, things which you can do. Is it a hospital? Is it a hotel? Looking at that last picture which we saw, you don't know if it's a hospital or a hotel. But when the brand is built, the consumer will know. What is the name? Where is it? So what are the questions which an architect will typically ask? He will ask you, what do you want to build? Very naturally. Do you want to build a hospital? Do you want to build a hotel? Or at least what is your product? Then within the product, you can also go in for sub-positioning because product is always very broad. As I said, the cow can give milk, or it can be beef, or it can be a pet. Similarly, let us say mobile phones. Apple is one kind of mobile phone. Samsung is another kind of mobile phone. Micromax is another kind of mobile phone. They may have the same features, but you don't quite see them equally because they are at different price points. You have slightly different expectations from them. Okay, so let us go into the next part of it, which is the next question. The next question is, where are you going to build? Which is usually where is the location of the physical building, or in whose mind do you want to build it? The third question is, what is going to be so special about it? Typically in marketing, we call this positioning. It means that why would a person buy your product? And then the next question he will ask you is, okay, what is the budget? I mean, what is the budget for you, and what is the budget for the buyer? So what is the product price, and how much can you afford to spend in the marketing and the advertising? So these four questions are, just as the architect asks these questions, a person who is building a brand must also ask the same questions. From this, you will basically be able to derive, once you got the answers of these questions, you will basically be able to derive a few things. What are the few things? You will be able to derive a building plan. Like the architect makes a plan, and this is what we call in marketing a strategy. We will obviously have later sessions in which we talk about strategy and stuff like that. Next is, what is the order of the building? I mean, obviously you'll build the ground floor first and then you build the first floor. That is the easy part of it. But even otherwise, depending on the complexity of the building, there's a certain building order which you must follow. This is something which in media we call sequencing. You know, what does the customer see first? What does he see next? And the third thing which you have to figure out is, what are the building's charms? I mean, why is the building attractive to the person? Even if you build a hospital or a hotel, there must be something why a person finds attractive about the hotel. Okay, so it's clear enough so far. So let us just quickly go through the basic points. One moment, please. Yeah. So quickly to recap, where are you going to build? What are you going to build? What is so special about it? And what is the building cost? Are your preliminaries? And from the preliminaries, you will basically come out with what is the building plan, what is the order of the building, and what are the building's charms or the attractions. Okay. Now let us take just some of the basic things which you need to have for any brand building, which is the same as a person. So first of all, you need a face. Any person, in order to be able to recognize him, you preferably need a face. Now, when you're planning any communication, if the face communicates something about what you are and what you do, it helps. You can always have a brand name which, you know, is quite meaningless. You just have to work a little bit harder on it, because the task of essentially is to minimize the information load which you are trying to get across to the other person. So since your logo is going to appear everywhere, that if it can carry a bit of information load, so much the better. So let us say Amazon tells you delivery with a smile. This is the Yellow Pages logo. It tells you you can find any place with your fingers. This one tells you that your voice will be preserved forever. Baskin Robbins tells you that 31 is a key figure for them, because on 31 days they have 31 flavors, so they play upon it. Rolex tells you it has something to do with royalty. Amul tells you lovable, cute, and butter. So many people have logos which have an M or an N, or, you know, it is just basically the rendition of the brand name. But it is always better if your face communicates rather than just states that I don't want to be critical, but say ITC logo is an ITC logo, you recognize it, but it does not tell you very much about the company. Whereas HMV definitely tells you a lot about the company. The second is, what is your name? Now, okay, I am called Sudip, he's called Sujit. It doesn't really mean anything much. A good name again takes a certain amount of communication load, which means if you hear Netflix, you know that, it's a net and films. Facebook, you understand social interaction. Volkswagen basically means Volkswagen, which means people's car. Close up has something to do with toothpaste. Sharp means the picture is sharp. So again, if the name is meaningful, it takes some load off the communication. So bear that in mind. The third thing which we need to bear in mind is that your propositions must be simple. I will not go into the whole detail of all this in terms of reading it out, but just look up the Volkswagen campaign. And they had a very simple problem that, in a world of fancy car, they had a very ugly looking small car, which nobody seemed to want. So what they had to do was to accept that it was a ugly looking small car, and try and get into the head that if you're a practical guy, you have one. So the practical things was it did not break down. It had very good resale value. It could travel through any kind of terrain. Okay, and they used a very self-mocking kind of style so that it became sort of, funny. The ads were amusing. They were everyday. They didn't try to be grand. So they stood out from the rest of the crowd. But the proposition was very simple. They're saying that, look, we are a basic car, but we are damn good as a basic car. We are not a fancy car. Similarly, the second part which we talked about was, is there a charming story? Do we have the time to go into a few ads?
Well, I think, Sudip, this will be on YouTube. So I think and the slide will also be there. So the viewers might be able to click this.
Yeah, so let me just quickly then cover the thing. I think most of you remember the Fevicol ads.
Yeah.
Which are all story based. I mean, you can look it up. I mean, something shows a guy walking past and the shadow getting stuck. Somebody shows a baby trying, a mother working and a baby trying to run away. And then she puts him on a Fevicol can and he seems to get stuck. So these are all very light-hearted stuff. They don't tell you anything about Fevicol, except that Fevicol sticks. Okay, and they are quite charming. So you remember them. And they're regarded as one of the best ads which we have. It's the best series of ads. Similarly, Swiggy. All of you probably remember the fat man, sneaking out and getting a gulab jamun from the delivery boy. What does it tell you? It tells you that Swiggy delivers anything, anywhere, at any time. That is all that the message is. They are not going in for a complicated message. So they have maintained simplicity and they have added charm to it. And now the fat man is actually very popular. Okay, now other people are trying to leverage his charm to get people to draw into him. Cadbury's talks about love. It does not talk about chocolates or how well they make chocolates or how wonderful the chocolates are. It tells you about love. Maruti, what I got out here is kitna deti hai. This guy who has gone to a presentation about spaceships. And after all the technical jargon, he says, kitna deti hai. Again, there's no great complication being sought. You all laugh at the end of it all. But it remains in your mind because, you enjoyed it. So what is charm? I mean, at the end of the day, it is an unfortunate fact of life, but the prettiest girl in the class never runs off with the best boy. She runs off with the biggest scallywag with charm. Okay, and in a sense, our relationship with products are like any other love story. We are charmed by people. We do not necessarily go by virtue. When our parents choose a groom, it is the virtues matter. So, I mean, if you look at your own life decisions, if your father bought you a car, he probably bought you an ambassador. But when you bought a car, you probably liked the shape and the color and didn't give a damn about the car itself. I'm not saying that is necessarily true, but many people do get attracted by what may seem to be the peripherals, but that suddenly becomes the most important. So charming story or a charming stance, something which is not very boastful, ultimately you'll find most ads, come out and say, I am the greatest, I am the best, I do this, I do that. Now just imagine that somebody comes to you and starts saying all this. What is your immediate reaction? It is likely to be, Arey, kahan se aa gaya yaar? So the traditional way of, I am number one, you coming into a classroom and saying, I am number one student, is not going to make you the most popular guy in class. It may be true. It is far better to be a little more modest because people like others who are helpful, who are charming, who don't try to boast, who have a sense of humor, who can tell a joke, and not the serious, pedantic, virtue-spilling kind of person. Same thing happens with brands. So finally, I just took one more factor, which is that you need to be consistent in the position which you have taken, or whatever you want to present yourself. So let us say if Sujit wants to be a fun guy and project himself as a fun guy, he is going to more or less try to be a fun guy most of the time. 10% he can be different. But 90% of the time he must be seen as a fun guy. But suppose one day he has a trauma and he changes his stance and he becomes very serious, I will find it difficult to accept it for quite some time, because our minds are tuned to being comfortable with something. We call it the comfort zone. So in the case of Vodafone, it was the dog which actually went through Hutch into Vodafone, into the stores as happy to help. And maybe even in the VI avatar, it will suddenly it'll come back again in some form or the other. So let us just remember the 3 basic building blocks of brand building, or the 5 basic building blocks: meaningful name. Sorry, I seem to have missed this one, but this again is essentially taking on from what we talked about, that you try to capture what you are in a phrase or a sentence. The length of it does not matter, but it must convey what it means. So just do it as an attitude. Complete man says that you are not just one-dimensional. Zindagi ke saath bhi, zindagi ke baad bhi tells you the basic promise. So you are essentially, at the basic level, you are a name, you are a face, you are a name, and you're something you stand for. And over time, you are basically trying to present these things as simple propositions with a certain amount of charm and consistently across time. So these are the basic building blocks of brand building. Now, what we will do in the next session, which is the paid session and which is the workshop session, is one set we will tell you how do you present yourself and your CV to your prospective employer. That's a workshop. Okay, and it will probably take a day or a day and a half. If you are interested, do write into us saying that we are interested. The other one is how do you approach brand building as a small entrepreneur. When you may be opening a restaurant, you may be opening a gym, you may be selling things online, you may be doing any kind of stuff, but how do you brand yourself and how do you popularize yourself? This is also a workshop. Obviously, the needs are different, so we will treat it differently. These are paid sessions. Like this one, we will have a preliminary session, which is at a nominal payment, maybe 100 rupees or 200 rupees. After that, if you find that interesting, then we have mentored sessions, which are more like 1:1. So let us know if you have found this interesting, or whether you felt that some of your concepts are cleared. The next class which we have of this nature will essentially be on copywriting. We will follow the same kind of structure, which is we will deconstruct what is copywriting and content writing and journalistic writing and various kinds of writing, and what are the basic principles of structuring and writing which you need to follow irrespective of what you're doing. Okay. Now, Sujit, over to you. I've done a lot of talking. So,
okay, now if you can...
Let me just stop sharing, show my face for the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Because I also want to be a brand. I want my face recognized. I want my name recognized.
And the charm. Don't forget the charm.
And the charm, yes.
Charm, right.
The charm is a little waning, but
yes. Okay,
I can smile.
You can smile. Now you can smile. And well, I think, Sudip, that was a wonderful session. And like me, I'm sure everybody else will enjoy. And the next session on copywriting, there is something I personally would love to know. I understand what is copywriting. I understand what is journalistic writing or, article writing. I have not been able to understand what is content writing. But I don't seem to find people who nowadays write copy or write article or, write, either they're all doing content writing. Now, what the content is, I don't know. my late master and mentor, Jagannath Go, had once told somebody who said that I'm a content writer. So Jagannath told him that if you don't have the content, then what do you write? Well, but he said, no, sir, but I'm a content writer. So I have not been able to understand what is this content writing business. There are no copywriters, there are no advertising writers, there are no journalists, there are no article writers, there are no essayists. It's all boiled down to one word, content writing. Okay, so that's apart from the fun, it is something that we look forward to. So what we'll be doing, this is what it will be done. This is going to go up on YouTube, and probably you're seeing this on YouTube right now. But we will have the link to the YouTube posted in our Ollie's group page in Facebook, social media, and you can pass it around to your friends once you see it. But most importantly, we are looking for feedbacks from you. So once you have seen this, tell us how useful it was for you and what else can we do for you. And remember one thing, Ollie's Advertising Roundtable possibly has the best advertising and brand marketing talent, perhaps all over the country as a part of the team. So we have the best resources. So do let us know. And if you want to join Ollie's, we have a website called Ollie's, OLYS.in. So go click at Ollie's.in and read about it, get back to us, give us your feedback. Thank you very much for being with us for this particular show. Thank you, Sudip. And we can now...
Thank you.
We can now go off the air.